mention those things because I'm trying to focus on what is the work at hand now. But you see, you all need to know that this is not a one subject school. There are some places you go and there's only one thing they do and there's only one level. This is not that, right? This is, remember we mentioned at an orientation day, you can get from your beginner's level to like a degree in safety here. And then there's all the offshoots. There's environmental courses, there's process safety. Look, right now, as I was waiting to start you all, I'm doing up some certificates on manual handling. I'm also doing up some certificates for Firewatch. I'm doing up some certificates. When I say doing the certificate, it means people would have finished these courses, right? So I'm actually doing manual handling at the moment, Firewatch, first aid. So there are many things that we don't mention, but to me, it's sufficient to tell you that we offer a range of courses from beginners to degree level, and you all could fit the slack in between there, right? So today is chapter 3. Can you believe that today is chapter 3? And chapter 3 is the last big chapter, right? So like when you finish chapter 3, it only have 2 sessions to go again, and that's chapter 4. I think I told you that last week. Chapter 2 took us 2 sessions, right? Chapter 2 only had 2 learning outcomes, 2.1 and 2.2. Chapter 4 has 4 learning outcomes, but they are very short, right? So you can take 2 of the learning outcomes in one day, and in 2 sessions you finish chapter 4, right? So chapter 3 is the last big chapter. Now, big in terms of length, if you have your book, you'll see it goes up to about 3.8, 3.1 to 3.8. I think I may have it here as well. Let me just try to coordinate here. Um, of course, you all know by now the same thing on this slide is the same thing here, right? So today, 3.1, we may get into 3.2. 3.3 will be a separate class. If you're taking notes, which you all should, don't just rely on the recordings because some of you all don't go back and look at it, right? We don't have time to go back and look at it. So 3.4 is the start of your project. Yes, right? So the start of your project is near. Today is the 9th. Sorry, today is the 8th. So today is 3.1, 3.2. Next week is the 15th. So the 22nd may be the theory on your project, right? What I can do now, the week after the 22nd, the 29th, I am not in Trinidad. I'm of course in Guyana, right? But the recordings of the project is already there. So what I can do, I could find them, well, after we have the class on the 22nd, and I can send you the recording for the one that will be on the 29th, right? So it's not as if you're missing out. You just have to have the time to review the video. And after the 22nd, how we do the project, right? Just in case you're not sure, right? How we do the project or how you should do the project. So some people do it and some people don't. Some people, they play the fool, right? But how we do the project is that I will do part 1. And then I ask you to do part 1. It have 4 parts to the project. So you should write that down and not wait for the 22nd to hear that, right? And then I will do part 2. And then you will have to do part 2, right? So if you do it like that, right? Exactly one sheet in a, exactly when I mean one sheet, there's one project, but it have different parts of it, right? So if you do it like that, then in other words, then by the time I finish, you finish, or by the time I come back, because if you have the 29th and you look at the video, you can actually do the part that you had to do, right? But there are some people who leave it to the end, right? And the thing is, I'm not too sure why, because the same time you're taking to the end, which is like the last week in August, right? Sorry, the last week in July, right? So the same time you're taking then is the same time you could have taken now, right? A lot of people waste a lot of time. I have realized that, right? A lot of people waste a lot of time on their phones, a lot of times watching TV, a lot of time watching video, right? And then they say you have no time, right? But the same time you're watching that TV show, you could have been doing your project. You have to do it anyway because you cannot pass NEBOSH. Remember, I don't have a city. Unlike preparing these certs here, 'cause I said manual handling and risk assessment. And unlike that, the NEBOSH cert doesn't come from here. It comes from England, right? And to get it, you have to pass the project and the exam, right? So keep that in the back of your mind. What you should write down is when I do part one, you should do part one. And the thing is, to be honest, these things on YouTube already. You can actually go and look at my whole video on part one and start it already, right? But it all depends on what you want. Remember, you're not here for long. You're here for 4 months, right? And it's what you want. Do you want to, at the end of the 4 months, to have something that will put you in a better position now, right? I had a student. I'm trying to find him for you. I was trying to remember his name in the week, right? I don't know if it's Roderick. Anyway, probably it's not Roderick. I don't know. Student sent me, pretty much sure it's not Roderick, a voice note, but he was saying in the voice note, when he got his NEBOSH certificate, right? He got employment one time. And this is what, like I sent someone on a vacancy, a job vacancy, and the person got through, right? That was Patrick. So today Patrick is working and he wasn't working before. And then so there are many such cases. But the thing is, you need the certificate in your hand. If you want to say you want to go England, well, you need the certificate in your hand to work. You want to go Canada, you want to go Guyana and work, you need the certificate in your hand. Without that in your hand, all the time you're playing on your phone, you'll just keep on playing on your phone. Because if you don't have the certificate, right, then keep playing on your phone, keep typing on your phone, keep watching videos because the thing that is important you didn't do, right? So I'm telling you all that because you see, chapter 3 is like the halfway mark now. And at the end of the day, as much as I know you, so I will call some names, Daryl, I know Daryl, right? But I cannot help you for the exam. If I could, then you wouldn't be here. Then it wouldn't be NEBOSH. It would probably be Cipriani or something. NEBOSH certificates are ranked higher, and there's a reason for that. The reason is that you have to earn it. But earning it is not hard, right? Oh, as a on that, let me just mention something. In terms of the assignments, right? So I don't think I've corrected all because remember, the school we actually have a feedback policy, right? 7 working days. But normally if I see it, I'll correct it as soon as I see it, right? Once I'm not training or I'm not doing something else, whatever have you, right? But so I did see some very good ones, and so I would again want to commend those students. You know, if it good, I had some very good ones. I'm not too sure if to ask those students permission to share it with you all, but you see, I find I spoon feeding too much because if I tell the whole class how to answer a question, and then you have some people getting it, but so the point of this is that some people still not getting it, right? I'm still seeing some answers that like you really want to pass because remember NEBOSH don't make joke right? If I I had to tell some students in another class in Ghana that remember I said I am not NEBOSH. What about you made you thought that I was NEBOSH? I never said I was NEBOSH. First thing in the orientation day, NEBOSH is located in Leicestershire, not San Fernando, not Duncan Village, right? So what make you think that if you do substandard work that you'll pass? So please remember, like when you write your answers, it must be expressed in about 3 to 4 lines, and you must tie in. And didn't we do that in class? This we're trying to understand, didn't we? Didn't I do the policy question? Like I went through the case study, we found a line. I think remember we did that. So how is it some people not doing it? So the answer is, do you not want to pass? Do you not want to better your life then? Right? So you decide what you want to do. So to me, it's not trigonometry. You write an answer, you say that a financial impact is medical costs, but you have to support it with lines from the case study, something from the case study. Remember, we said that. Is that clear to you all students? Is that clear? Do I need to call your name one by one? to make it known that you have to put the lines with the answer, otherwise they don't give the mark?
Understood.
Yeah, but why some people are not doing it? We all want to pass because we all spending the same money, we all making the same sacrifice, to be here 1.5 hours, not too long, but still is something. You know, so remember we wanted to pass, but at the same time, it's like CXC then, your maths teacher, probably a bad example here, but the maths teacher would want you to pass, but the maths teacher that you have, Mr. Billy or Frank or whatever, right? He or she not correcting your CXC paper. So if they know you, they can't help you. The paper went to Barbados, right? CXC papers sometimes go Barbados for correcting, right? So um I already know where it is, right? I pass there a lot of times anyway, right? The CXC headquarters anyway. But the thing is, like your maths teacher, as much as you and them and they'd buy a smalter for you or whatever have you. I remember in secondary school anyway, right? Or you share a smoke with your secondary school maths teacher. I'm just making that one up, of course. The person can't help you, right? So this is like that. This is like that. That at the end of the day, you have to come good. You're spending your money. You want to pass. We want you to pass, but you have to do the work that you're supposed to do. We're not asking you to do much. To me, 4 or 5 lines is not much. In other words, I think a primary school child could write that, but you need to tie it with your case study, right? I'll see how today go, right? Today class have assignments again with it. Um, if possibly I see some of us still missing it, I'll have to. I mean, like to me, the only way now is to read, write, and spell for you, which is like to show you somebody's paper, right? How it is day writing, and to me, if you can't get it after that, well, then you need prayers or something, right? You need to check out your pastor, imam, or pundit or something to try to open your head a bit and understand what it is you have to do to pass this particular qualification, right? All right, so let's make a start. If you have your book, the concepts are very simple. I mean, I think we could finish 3.3 today. The concepts are very, 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 very simple, right? But they come for exam. That's the thing, right? Remember, again, do you all have your book? Do you all write down when I say, look, this is a trending question, this is not a trending question, right? Again, if you remember being back in CXC, when your teacher would have mentioned, like, I guess, again, if it was something like maths and they mentioned, look, this type of question has come, but then you're supposed to take a note of that, right? It's not that we can't be so illiterate sometimes that we have to wait for somebody to say, look, and say it over and over again that this is a question, this is a trending question, right? So as a tertiary level student, that you should have your ears open. You don't have to wait for me to say it 100 times. And that's why I find myself saying 100 times, right? So anyway, 3.1 is, right? 3.1 is, so I just had a pop up on the screen, right? 3.1 is a past paper question all the way, right? So let's go into it a bit. I'm going to read a bit and explain because when I explain, it's finished, right? This is so simple. I could finish it in 5 minutes time, right? But I'll read a couple of slides. I won't stay too long on it because I want to do 3.2 and maybe we could reflect on a question or something, right? So I'll take it back. I'll take it back to the beginning, right? Which is, like every chapter in the NEBOSH course has like a nickname, right? Like it kind of got a nickname then. Like chapter 1 is perceived to be the lower chapter. But when you really check out your book, if you'll even open it, there are other things in chapter 1 that wasn't law, like moral, legal, financial. Well, moral actually was not law. Financial was not law either, right? There are things in chapter 1 then that wasn't law, like the definitions wasn't law, right? But the common thing is chapter 1 is seen to be like the lower chapter, right? Chapter 2, which we finished last week, the video was posted on YouTube last Saturday night anyway. Chapter 2 is perceived to be the policy chapter, even though there were things inside it that wasn't policy. Like in a way, ISO 45001 was really a management system. It wasn't really on the policy. the policy was actually a part of the management system. But, if you look back here for the revision, right, policy was really part of a management system, but the chapter got the name, people tend to think of it like policy. And so chapter 3 is like that. As I say, I'm taking it back, right? Chapter 3 is like that. Chapter 3 has a lot of stuff inside of it, including the project is inside here, but the common name for chapter 3 is not really the risk assessment chapter, but it's the culture chapter, right? And the truth is, it kind of is, but again, just like the other chapters, there are things in there that is not culture, right? Anyway, it starts off with culture. So what is culture? Let's read this one out. Culture, they say, is the way we do things around here. The HSC, which is now the HSE, right, define culture as the product of the individual and group values, attitudes, perceptions, competencies, and pattern of behavior that determines an organization's commitment, style, and its ability to manage health and safety. Climate, they say, culture indicators as perceived by an individual or group at any moment in time. So we can take a read of it again, right? So the HSC definition, or even the one to the top, culture is the way we do things around here. Culture is the way we do things around here. The HSC definition said it's the product of the individual and the group, their values, their attitudes, their perceptions, their competencies, their pattern of behavior that determines an organization commitment and style and ability to manage health and safety, right? So there are two things we need to pull out from that. But first of all, we need to understand it, right? So let's just talk about it a bit, right? So culture, the way we do things around here. So getting back to last chapter, right? The chapter on policy. If you all remember, right? Like anybody remember like a policy statement from chapter 2? Like what's a policy statement from chapter 2? And where would you find a company policy? Like where would you find this, like the policy statement or the vision statement? Like where would you find that?
The policy could be found on an employee uniform.
Very good, yeah. And okay, very good. And where else could you find it? Anybody else? Like where else could you find that vision statement or that one page? Or where could you find it around a company?
On the wall in the office.
Very good. Excellent point there, Christina, right? Okay, and very good there, Kavita. So I kind of making mention of that to tell you, well, culture, like you could see the company policy with your eyes, like you could see it on the coveralls, you could see it, like you could see the policy on the wall, but you can't really see the culture. But here the thing, right? There are, what is the word I'm looking for? Well, the book said the word indicators. So I'll just stick with that, right? So they are indicators of the culture, even though you cannot physically see culture, right? In other words, then you could actually touch the policy. The policy, I think I was showing you one last week, I can't remember. Policy could be like a folder, right? The policy could be like a folder. And so you could actually touch that. You could actually put your hand on the coverall and stuff, right? But you cannot really, like there is no one policy for culture. If you really read the definition a bit, they say culture is like your values. So you can't really put your hand on the value of the company, or should I say the values of the company, right? Or the perception with regards to safety. However, there are things that you could actually still indicate then, or there are things that you could actually still pick up to tell you that the company has a good culture or a bad culture, right? Let me give you some examples. So culture is the way we do things around here. So you drive up to a company, right? You drive up to a company. You're driving and you drive up to a company. Let's say you're going to an interview And as you enter, the security guard meets you, does his check, informs you that you must have on your safety shoes to get into the company for the interview, informs you that you'd have to stand here and he would escort you. As you cross the road, the road to get to the doorway, whatever, you notice that it's well signage. There are good signs around. It says safety is my first priority, unlike this sign here. As you enter, you kind of get the feeling everybody tells you good morning. So you kind of get the idea. So as you sit and you wait there, somebody passes by. I actually had that experience and many times I actually, just a long story there. But as you sit there, somebody comes up to you, they say, "Are you okay? Are you getting through? Do you need anything? You need a water, you need a coffee," right? So there are some things then that you get the idea that this company is a good company to work for, right? As you go to the interview, you are greeted, they shake your hand, and of course it goes on like that. So what I'm saying is that, so you think you understand, it's like a pattern of behavior, right? Now the opposite is also true, right? Like you drive up to a company, you're going for the interview. As you enter, there's no security guard. The booth is there, but the guard is not there. You see a sign that says no speeding or speed limit 40 kilometers per hour, but you see a whole set of vehicles coming in and out speeding. The sign says PPE beyond this point, but as you look, you see nobody wearing it, right? So as you get in and you get for the interview, right, you say, well, don't I need, like a proper safety shoes? They say no. They say around here, we don't really bother with that, right? The sign says one thing, but what we do is different. You understand? So there are things that like even though you cannot, there's no one folder for culture, like how there was a document for policy. There is no one policy for culture, but culture is something that is intangible, but you could actually still pick up the vibes then that, this company look like them earlier care about nothing, right? And this company, if I get through to work here, I get through, maybe they're paying better than elsewhere, just that maybe the signs and stuff and nobody adhering to it. So maybe I have to fix it because I'm the safety, or when I get in, I'll be the safety. But the thing is, you soon realize if the culture is bad from the outside, it's going to be bad from the inside. Because if you look at the definition, culture is a product of the individual. Now, who is the individual? The individual is actually you. And the group, now who is the group? The group is the company you're working for. Massive group of companies, right? Incotech, right? Unicoma, the group of, so these companies say group, the Unicoma group of companies, the Massey group of companies. And if it's bad from the head, then if it's bad from the head, like they don't really care about safety, right? They don't really care about safety. They just have the signs, PPE beyond this point. When you get it, right? You say, well, we really need to have safety shoes here. They say no. The sign says, safety glasses in the workshop, but nobody wearing it. Everybody have it on top of their head, right? So even though, like I said, you could pick up that vibe, right? Like I remember going to Grenada. Well, I remember a lot, just like the Grenada. I'm actually going back to Grenada again, yes. Right? Not Guyana, Grenada. I'm going to Guyana this month, but Grenada is coming up as well. So I remember training a company there called Grenlec. Grenlec is like the TN-Tech. Grenlec, like how we have TN-Tech, they have Grenlec, right? So I remember they were talking a lot. By the way, they paid good, which was good, right? I mean, the Grenada money is more than TT money, right? I actually didn't realize that because what I should have done is charge them in EC currency now. If you have ever gone to Grenada, St. Lucia, like the things on the streets or the things in the grocery or the supermarket. I say supermarket because if I have anybody from Guyana here, Guyana people doesn't understand what is a grocery, right? Like they say supermarket. So the things in the supermarket is the same price as Trinidad. It's the same price as Trinidad. So like, let me give you one. Okay, like if you buy a burger, how much is a burger in Trinidad? Like a burger on the streets is how much? A burger in the streets in
About
Trinidad.
$65.
Nah, man, that's about what kind of burger you buying, right?
About $30.
You buying a real big burger. A burger in Trinidad is about maybe 30, about 40, right? $45 based on where
Burger
you're
and
buying it.
healthy.
Yeah, it does mind if it's healthy. The one that's for 35 is just as unhealthy as the one that's for 45, right? Anyway, so in Grenada, it's the same price. It's the same $45 you're paying for a burger. Just to give an example of the grocery prices, not the supermarket prices. But then if it's 45 EC, then that is about 100 and something TT you're paying for one burger. So I remember when I was making in the supermarket in Grenada, and literally I was like so shocked because the prices were not adjusted. Right? If you go to England, the prices is cheaper than going to Grenada or Trinidad. The prices are adjusted, meaning if this calculator was 100 TT, it would just be 10 pounds. And 10 pounds is less than 100 TT, so it's actually cheaper. If McDonald's then in Trinidad is $50 or $60, right? Then in the UK is actually like 4 or 5 pounds. It have been adjusted. But in Grenada and some of the Caribbean islands like St. Lucia, it's not adjusted. So the long and short of that is that it's much more expensive anywhere elsewhere there. So I was getting there, and I remember seeing Gren, like they were talking all this thing about the company being a good company. But the first thing I noticed when I drive up was that they had a high accident statistic. They actually published it for like for the public to see. So they had a couple of accidents in the month then, right? So I was telling myself, so like that's an idea of culture where you say you're a safe company, but if you drive up and you see you had 3 incidents or 3 accidents in a month, then that is an indicator of something in your culture not being correct. You understand? A high accident rate. If you want, you could find this one in your book. You want to turn the book and see this one? Page 5. So the story have an ending, right? Yeah, the story come back to page 5. So a high accident rate, if you look at page 5, so those things are called indicators. Those of us without the book, I can line. I have them on the slide too. I'm just kind of sticking on the definition, right? So like they are called indicators, right? They are called indicators. So a high accident rate is an indicator. So you can't be saying that you're a world-class company, but you have a high accident rate, right? Right, folks, we have to take it back a bit, right? In a minute, I have to go back to the concept I was on because I ain't finished with that. I just wanted to show you that. So the idea here is that culture, even though you cannot physically see it, there are some things about it that you could pick up that vibe then to tell you whether the culture is good or bad, right? If you want, we can read out this slide. It's the same thing in your book, you know? So accident rates, if they are high, they will tell you the company have what is called a negative culture. If you want, you can look at page 4 and 5, right? Even though I haven't introduced the concept as yet. But if it's good then, if these things are, if the things about your company would have been good, then you end up with a positive safety culture. And if the vibe you're picking up about the company is bad, well, then you end up with a negative safety culture, right? So when you watch these answers in the book, the same thing on the slide, accident rates, absenteeism, sickness rate, same thing in the book, staff turnover, level of compliance. If you want to turn the page, you'll see another one there. Compliance with safety or working condition, right? Level of compliance with safety rules and working conditions. I want you to understand, so do you all understand that these could be both? Do you all understand that these could be both negative and positive? Think about it a bit. If the accident rate is low there, then the culture will be seen to be what? Good or bad? If the accident rate was
Good.
0, good,
Good,
yeah,
good,
so
good.
good. And so if the sickness rate was high, so the workers are complaining about dust, somebody said the place dusty, they getting dermatitis, the skin irritating them, well then that's an indicator of a negative safety culture. The one I mentioned here, level of compliance with safety rules. As you drive up to the company, the sign says PPE beyond this point, but nobody are wearing it. So then there's a lack of compliance. And if it's a lack of compliance, so then the culture is seen to be bad. What are the managers doing? Because it came back to them. Culture is made up of two things, you and the managers. So if you falter, what are the managers doing? Are they letting it slide as well? That's the definition of culture. Culture is what you do, but what your company do. I'll come back to this definition still. We have something to understand here still. All right. But there's a relationship between safety culture and performance. They say better motivated workers would have a better culture. You'd have fewer accidents, fewer lost time, fewer absenteeism rates. You feel happy to come to work, right? You may have less fines on HSE matters because you were doing the right thing. Your culture is good. You may have a better reputation with customers and clients. Indicators of safety culture, right? Okay, so here's something, right, folks? I want you to just tell me if you understand something. So I want to check on three things. And you see, there's something else you have to understand for the exam, right? So what I want you to understand for now, tell me if you get this point, right? I'll ask them in turn. So do you understand that every company has a culture? Yes or no?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, good. If you're not getting that, you could think about the school you was in. You could think about your high school, right? And your high school or your primary school, because high school is be a mess, but your primary school maybe would have had a culture. Now, what made up the culture of that school? You did. You, the student, did. And the principal did. And the teachers did as well. It was a combination. That's why they say culture is a product, right? Now, if you take the word product and you look at the meaning of the word product, product means to put together. The word product means put together. Like when you did maths in school, right? Sorry for the maths examples. But when you did maths in school, right? And you learned your tables, they said 2 times 3. 2 times 3 is 6. And they say that's the product. Well, how do they know 2 times 3 is 6? Right? How do they know 2 times 3 is? Did somebody just invent this? Did somebody smoke, and invent 2 times 3 is 6? The answer is no. You see, 2 times 3 really means that you put 2 groups of trees together. So, of course, it's mango season. So if you have mangoes, at least in the Caribbean here anyway, mangoes or chenet, but then nobody would really buy 6 chenet, right? But I just saying, right, for those of us who know what, I'm not too sure if the people say the same thing in Guyana, but what we call chenet, I'm not too sure if you all say the same thing, but we can stick to mangoes, right? So how is 2 times 3 6? Because you see, you put 2 groups of trees together. So you put 2 grouping of mangoes together, but 2 sets of trees. So then if you add them up together, you say 6. So product means to put together, right? So just so you put 2 groups of 3 sets of mangoes, and they say the product of 2 and 3 is 6. You say the product of culture is equal to you and that of the worker. Well, sorry, that of the managers, right? So here what I want you to write that down because that is actually a formula. That is actually something that is heavily tested. But not the formula itself, but the understanding of what I just said. I'm taking off what I have there for you, right? So culture, if you could write the word culture out for me. Culture is equal to, and you put the equal sign. Culture is equal to the worker, which is you, right? So the worker or you, could I just put you? You could put worker if you want. But culture is equal to you, but you could put worker, please, because NIBOSH wouldn't really say you, they would say the worker or the individual. They would actually say the word individual, right? So, but culture is equal to you together with your managers, that you all have the same, watch it, the same values, the same attitude, the same pattern of behavior. If they say PP beyond this point, then everybody wearing it from managers to workers. If you have that togetherness, which is what product means, put together. If you have the togetherness of you and the managers or the group or the organization, then you end up with what is called a positive safety culture. If you ever have a disconnect though, like the worker, now the disconnect can happen anywhere because that is what together means. Together doesn't mean one party alone could disagree. Together means anybody, and that if that togetherness falls out then, right? Then you could end up with a negative safety culture. So if the worker, like what happened in Paris, if the worker wanted to do a permit to work, but the organization didn't allow the time for it, right? So that's the pattern of behavior. The pattern of behavior is that the managers and them said, get the job done. So that's a disconnect. And if you have a disconnect, then you end up with a negative safety culture. The other one is also true. If the company says, okay, before you all start work, you all must do a GSA, but the workers are not doing it, right? So there is the lack of that togetherness. Then if you have the togetherness, this is on page 4, I think, you end up with the positive safety culture. And if you have some sort of disagreement, it doesn't have to be like a verbal disagreement. It's just that the workers are not doing what they are told. So the simplest example is PPE must be worn beyond this point. You must have on your safety glasses, but you're taking it off, you're putting it on your forehead, right? So the supervisors have to come and inform you, please put on your safety glasses. So that togetherness is not there, right? All right, I want to pause here for a question. So what you needed to know was culture exists in every company. The other thing you need to know is that culture could be good and bad, or good or bad, right? If all goes well with you and your manager, the culture is good. If there is some sort of disconnect between you and the manager, well, the culture could be bad. Tell me if you understand that so far. That's what we have on this slide. We're going to introduce the question because you don't really need anything else to do the question. The question is right here looking at you. So if you're one of those of us who write it, I want to kind of call out a question. I'm not going to write it, right? And we have to discuss how to get the answer. But the thing is, you already know how to get the answer. You just have to tap into it, right? So if anybody writing, if you have your writing pencil on, please get ready to write like what normally comes for exam, right? So what they normally like to ask you, they like to say comment on so some questions say the negative, so you can put negative and you can put positive because some questions say positive. So comment on the negative / positive culture indicators at the company. So comment on the negative, but it don't have to be negative. Some questions are positive, right? They ask positive indicators of health and safety at the company. You have that? Tell me when you have it, right? Because it's very simple, but it have to do with understanding. This is what tertiary education is all about, right?
So could you repeat that again? Sorry about that.
Comment on the negative / positive indicators of health and safety at the company.
Thank you.
All right, no problem. So anybody remember what does comment mean? Again, like what does the verb comment mean? Comment means what? What does comment mean? Anybody want to give it a try? What does
Making a
comment mean?
statement.
To give your
Yeah.
opinion.
Okay, comment means to give your opinion. So that's the correct one. If you don't know that as yet, please write it down. Comment is the most common verb they have in NEBOSH right now. Comment. Comment means to give your opinion. Right? Now, I kind of leading you to a point. The point is actually not the question, and you may think the point is the question. The point is not a question. Point is something greater than that. The point is your understanding of what the question is asking. All right, so here's something that could be tricky, right? So here's the thing, right? So the mark for that is sometimes 15 marks, sometimes 20 marks. sometimes 18 marks, 1/8. So if you're writing down anything, I wanted to put like a high mark to it, like maybe 15 marks or 18 marks, right? So the question is comment on the culture of the company. Let's say it was positive or negative. We could pick one. We'll have to pick one just now, right? So let's pick negative, right? In fact, we should pick positive. It's always best to stay positive, right? So we'll pick positive, right? So comment on the positive indicators of safety culture, right? Now, what I want you to do, I want you to watch your book. But those of us who have it and those of us who didn't have it, I'll try to just get a slide back to where it was, right? Because the same thing, the same answers in the book is what I had here. And the obvious question is, well, we can start with this because if they say 15 answers and they say positive indicators, well, we had to say something like, anybody know the accident rate had to be what, high or low?
Low.
Low, if they say low, right? But the thing is, those of us with the book too, a lot of people cry for their book and we don't have the book, and I'm telling you, you're not being disadvantaged. Anybody sitting down here with the textbook will tell you the same thing in the book is the same thing in the slide. The book doesn't have any more. So when you check these, this is not 15. So even if you say the absenteeism rate is low, you support that with a line. You say the staff turnover is low, you support that with a line. Remember, we say positive, right? I've chosen positive, right? I'm assuming the question say positive, right? So the reason why I asked the question and I'm going down this train of thought here with you is to tell you that, again, the answers are not in the book. Some there, but where the rest of them, where you're getting 15 answers from? The answer is you. You see, if you understand, positive was anything that was what? A positive indicator is anything that is what about the company?
Good.
Good. So if you understand that, but then remember, you have your case study. So that's what you need to remember. Let me just write that down here for you, all right? If you just know this alone, you can do a whole question. You didn't even need the textbook. You see, all you need is a case study. As you read the case study, if they say the workers are given an orientation, well, then you can say, in my opinion, a positive indicator is that the workers were properly communicated to upon entering the compound. And you can say this is seen in the case study where they were given a 5-minute orientation. Folks are thinking, this is what tertiary education is. Remember, the big difference between tertiary and secondary is that in secondary school, the teacher gives you a diagram. I'm trying to think of one, and the worst one came in my head there. Anyway, so they give you a diagram, right? And they say draw and label that. So that's just regurgitation, right? Or they ask you what, like even if it's a maths question, right? They say calculate the area of a circle, pi r squared. Now pi r squared is just memory, right? Or you're gonna do something in English, well, English have reasoning, which is what safety is as well, a bit of reasoning, right? But if it was another subject then, right? Let's say it was, I really don't know much things other than what I did. But like social studies, right? So who is the president of Trinidad and Tobago? Nobody knows, so, anybody knows the president in Trinidad? So nobody, I think I asked you that last week, but nobody really knows in Trinidad who is the president of Trinidad, right? But the point is, if you had known, then it is memory, right? But tertiary education is not really testing memory, it's more testing understanding. Do you understand that the concept of culture could be good or bad? And if something is good, then it is seen to be a positive safety culture. Therefore, you do not need your textbook. Because the question is saying, draw all your answers from the case study. You do not need Google, right? You can probably use it for help. I mean, you can use what's in your book, but the book ain't going to give you so much, right? As you read the case study, let me give you another one. If they said that there was a trained first aider, but then you say, you understand what I'm trying to tell you? The answers, people, the 15, 18, whatever, it's not going to all come from the book, well, from the book. It's going to come from the case study. It's not even going to come from Google. As you read the case study, when they said it was a first aider, you say, in my opinion, I believe that the company had a positive safety culture in that they were 2 trained first aiders. And then you say This is seen in the case study where it was mentioned, and you quoted that they are two trained first aiders. But what do you think about that? Because like I keep telling students, if you understand how to answer a NEBOSH question, you really understand that you don't need nothing more than yourself. But if you don't understand, then on the day of the exam, you find yourself in the book, you find yourself Googling a whole set of nonsense, right? But if you understood the concept, because this is a question. Every past paper have a culture question. Right? But probably not 100%. I shouldn't put remember I'm not NEBOSH, right? 99%, probably 98%. Right? But most past papers have a culture question. So the same thing for negative. If they had said what was negative, they can start off here. But as you read the case study, if they say, and I'm actually quoting stuff from a case study for you, if they say the apprentice was using his phone while operating the forklift, well then that's a negative safety indicator. You have to say, in my opinion, a negative safety indicator is a lack of compliance with safety rules. This is seen where, and you quoted, the apprentice was using his cell phone while driving the company vehicle. Tell me if you understand, because if you understand it, 3.1 is done. What you all think? We just have one thing to wrap up in 3.1, which is something. If you turn the page, you'll see something on peer, the influence of peers. But if you turn on page, well, the page is in 3, you'll see 3.1. It's finished. After complaints about working condition, there was really nothing else. But the thing here, we had to pause because there are past papers on this. Right? To assume that you all believe that there's only 6 or 7 answers in the book is not true. The answer is in you. If you understand the concept, the answer is in you. And the answer is in the case study. Tell me what you think of taking that off, and maybe I can make mention of another tricky question. Sometimes there's a little trick to it. But perhaps I should leave that for 3.3 because 3.3 touches that, or 3.3 deals with another variation of this concept here. Unless if you want me to mention it now, because we have the formula written out already. Doesn't prevent us from writing it out next week as well too. Right? What y'all think? What y'all want? Mention the second concept one time, the second passive one time? Or you're still
Yes, sir.
confused? Yeah. All right.
Yes,
So,
sir.
right, some past papers, right? What they do, instead of asking what are the negative indicators, they separate it out. They say what are the individual, like how the individual could have contributed to the accident. So if they ask individual worker, you cannot quote managers. You have to now talk about the individual himself. Right? And 3.3 deals with that. I just mention if they question paper. Like if the person was young, a young worker, an unskilled worker. So those are the individual factors that contribute to the accident. Right? And then some participants now say organization or they say managers. This is a very famous question, eh? Like what the managers could have done differently, or where did the managers go wrong, or for you to comment on the role of the manager. And as you read the case study, if it says the managers come to work, but nobody sees them, right? They shout at the staff. So then it's the same answer, but you have to kind of zone down to that part of the formula then. If they say individual, then you kind of zone down to what in the case study talks about the individual worker. And if they say very common, very, very, very 100% common, is what the managers have done, right? So again, that's like 2-3 past papers. There's about 3 past papers there. Because they could ask the whole thing of culture itself, but then they could zoom down into this. But that is actually 3.3. So you can leave it a bit, right? This week, the question I'll give you will be like an overall culture question. But if you turn your book, you see what I'm talking about. 3.3 is what they call human factors. If you watch it, you see the same thing that I just tell you. individual and organization. And then they deal with each one, like what the organization could have done, what the individual could have done, right? But very simple stuff because, you know, you could just, as you read the case study, you'll see what the manager's doing wrong. It'll be managers like something happened and they said there was no trained first aider. But then you can say the managers, you know, they didn't allocate money for first aid training, right? All right, I'm moving on, right? Let's try to kind of bring the curtains down on 3.1. Yeah. Okay, so the president name is there. Okay, good. Yes, yes, that's the president, right? I was just trying to make a point, you know. You know, like did we really change rule from the British? You know, when Trinidad and was Guyana wanted to become a republic, we said we didn't want the queen over us, we didn't want rule over us, but did we really change anything? At least the queen was, do you know that the queen was in Trinidad? Do you know that do you all know that? There's actually on YouTube and stuff, right? Do you know the princess of England was actually in Princestown? Have you ever seen Christine Kangaloo in Princestown or in San Fernando or in Palaseco? Have the president actually walked the streets in Princestown or Talparo or, you know, Shogunas? Have the queen, I mean, when I say queen, I mean the queen Christine Kangaloo, because the real queen was in Trinidad. Have you all seen the videos of it? Do you all know the people adored her? Trinidadians are talking about, right? Because they would work. They would actually work. I don't know if you all know that. But we change one in the hope of getting a local person. But, you know, I mean, from all the presidents going by, from all the prime ministers going by, those of us in Guyana may understand this more than those of us in Trinidad, but isn't Mr. Ali out in the streets in Guyana? Isn't the president of Guyana, Mr. Ali, in the Scarborough market? Yeah? When last you see the president of Trinidad and Tobago in a market? Well, when I mean a market, like, not necessarily not going to make market, I'm not talking about going to make market, but looking at like the vendors and what's happening with the vendors and stuff, right? Because the British used to do it, right? All right. Okay, so the influencer peers, just the last concept here, those of us in the book, you'll see this on page. We have to go back. Page 6, is it? The influencer peers. Let me read it out for you first, and then I'll tell you something about it as how it came. Yeah, this actually come as well. This came about 3 times. It's not that famous. Like for this whole year, this question didn't come. Right? Since January to now, every month has been an exam, but this question has not shown up. But it has shown up about 3 times before, the very same question. Right? All right. And I think after that, what we can do, it still is 10 o'clock, isn't it? Is it that we go to 3.1 or 3.2, right? Or we look at a past paper or something, right? But 3.1 is finished, right? Anyway, our peers influence us in many ways. Now, when they were talking about peers here, they were really talking about the workers, right? So it's not really villagers they're talking about. One of which can be our safety behavior. The overall attitude of the workforce can be a driving force to influence other workers, especially those workers with a dominant or inspiring leadership style. It is therefore the belief and perception of the group, or therefore the belief that it is therefore that the belief and perception of the group will soon also be that of the individual worker. Let me try to bring this to the end, right? So peers can influence health and safety behavior by being present for safety meetings, personally wearing PPE, reporting accidents and incidents, effectively communicating with managers, taking part in inspections if needed, taking an active role in safety campaigns, stopping unsafe work, and insisting that it is done in a safe manner, right? So if you notice how it's written again in the world today, they normally take a positive perspective with certain things where like where a question like this is asked now. So peers could be negative or positive, but it's more taken like when it's written to be positive, right? However, the past papers sort of take on a negative rule sometimes, right? Like the past papers may describe, if you want, I will tell you one. This one came December 2023, right? December 2023. A question came that said, there was a safety meeting going on, right? And then somebody in the safety meeting, somebody with a dominant style. So sometimes the host doesn't have to be the one with a dominant style or a dominant personality. Somebody said in the safety meeting that they wanted snacks, right? This is a past paper talking about, right? Somebody said they wanted snacks. And then the host of the meeting went to buy the snacks, went to purchase the snacks in a cafe. Well, when they came back, though, everybody had left the meeting because they saw it as a waste of time, right? So sometimes the peers then take on that role as a negative influence. And that is what the questions come like. Like they will ask you, what is the influence of peers? And you could read the case study and see who was doing what. Your peers could be anybody, fellow workers, supervisors, managers. So if they say comment, what you need to do, comment could be good for some people, but then comment could be bad for some people, right? Like it may be that the manager is supporting the company, but then there's a worker then that's doing something that should not have been done anyway, right? So the influence of peers could be seen to be negative as well as positive, right? If you understand that. Yeah. Yeah. All right. See if you have any questions in it, because that's it. 3.1 is actually finished. Ensure the answers of all of these things are in the case study. The influence appears, if positive, negative, what the culture indicators are, all those things are seen from the case study itself, right? We're gonna start 3.2 now. If you want, you can have a look at that. I think I've reflected enough on past papers, so we don't have to really, draw a whole past paper out anyway, right? Let's have a look at 3.2. 3.2 is very easy as well, right? Just give me 1 minute, yeah? All right, so let's move on. Just had somebody at the office here, right? So improving health and safety culture, right? So if you have the book, literally I could explain a lot of this for you, right? Which I think I'll do based on the time, right? So but you may have yours written still, but I took off my formula, right? I'm gonna write it back here. Culture is equal to the individual times that of the organization, right? So the concept here, if you turn that page, if you turn your first page, the concept here is that if you want to improve culture, anybody could say what we have to do. If we say culture is equal to the individual, I just draw a person, right? Culture is equal to the individual times that of the organization. So we just draw like a building here, right? But remember, it's not really the physical building we're talking about. It's really the person or the company, the managers inside there, right? So if culture is equal to these two things, well then how do you improve culture? What is the two ways to improve culture? Anybody? If culture is made up of two things, but then they say improve culture, so then what's the two ways to improve culture? You have to do what?
Training and example.
Individuals and organization.
Very good. You either have to improve on yourself and you have to improve on the manager. So that's the only two ways. If something is something, right? If you say, you know, that I don't know, I can't think of a household example for that one, right? But if you say that that you know that I can't think of a household example for that one, right? But you can stick to this one, right? So if you say something is something, right? If you say, I guess I'm trying to think of a drink or something, right? Like a beer is a Carib, which is actually not true, right? A beer, I mean, like those of us in Guyana wouldn't really appreciate that too much, right? But a beer is a Carib. Carib is a beer for those of us who may be on the worldwide system anyway, right? So a beer is a Carib, but for the Americans, a beer is not a Carib, right? A beer is not a Carib in America. Nor is it right in Guyana. What's a beer in Guyana? What's the name of the top beer in Guyana? I think I have Vincent here. What's the top beer in Guyana?
Got Corona beer.
Corona is the top
590
in
beer.
Guyana. No man, Vincent. You put me to shame there. What's the beer that you all
Well,
have,
whatever.
that you all manufacture?
Banks.
Bangs. Yeah,
Bangs.
Bangs beer. Then I got GT beer too, sorry. GT
Yeah, it
beer.
have TT beers across it, but Banks I know is Guyana, right? Banks is Guyana.
Mm.
They have one in Barbados as well, right?
Yeah, sir. Yeah, right, Bangs.
This is Guyana. So you can't say a beer is a Carib, but the point of saying that is that if you do say a beer is a Carib and you want to improve on the Carib, but then you have to improve on the beer. So if you say something is something, if you say something is something, and then they say you want to improve on it, but then you have to improve on what you're making, right? So a beer is a Carib, but if you improve on it, but then you have to improve on the Carib. So if you say culture is the worker and the company, but then they say improve culture, but then you have to improve what culture is, the person or the company. And if you check your book, see if you see that's what they did. In your book, and same thing we did on the slide too, in your book, page 7, the first thing when you look at improving culture, what's the first thing that they spoke about? They said management, commitment, and leadership. So there's only two ways to improve culture. You have to improve on managers. And if you turn this page, you'll see the other one. Watch it. What do you think this is doing here? Competent worker. Because that's the only way to improve culture. If culture is two things, the worker and the company, then there's only two things to do to improve. You have to improve on yourself, or you improve the culture of the managers themselves. And that's what we did on the slide here. So folks, I think you understand that, because I was saying that too could be a question. Of course, NABOSH doesn't really ask, they don't really ask like to recommend improvements anymore. They may just say like, what about the individual contributed to the accident? Right? Let's take a look and see what I have on my slide here, right? So what I have here, we did the same thing. Let's watch the slides, right? If I could get it to move. I'm trying to leave my formula. So the first thing we spoke about was the ways managers could improve culture. Now, remember, you do not really need these points. What you need is a concept, because the answer you have to get is from the case study. You don't need my lines. You just need to understand what the concept is. When they say what the managers or comment on the role of the manager, you have to read and say what the manager was doing. Was the manager attending the meeting? Was the manager part of the investigation? Or was the manager shouting at the staff? Right? You understand? You don't need, tertiary education is not regurgitating lines. That's secondary school or primary school. Tertiary is about mature education, it's about thinking, right? So gaining the commitment of managers, I read this for you, but I wanted to show you now. So gain the commitment of the managers. Managers should be visible, they should be leading, etc. And then when you finish with this, we actually talk about the people now. What the worker could have done differently, right? What the worker could have done differently. What about the worker, his age? I have all that here now, but you have to go a little bit forward, right? You have to go a little bit forward to see it. Right? What about the worker, the person's attitude, skills, habit, personality, language, education, experience, the things about you, your medication, your stress level, phobias, personality, special needs, right? But the thing is, now this has come in, as I was telling you before, they could say comment on the role of the worker. But to me, you don't even need the answers on the slide. You just need it from the case study. If you see then, they say the worker disregarded the safety sign and put his hand into a revolving machine. So you could say, well, in my opinion, the worker deviated from rules and procedures and put his hand in the machine. You could probably say that had to do with experience, or that may have to do with a behavioral thing. In other words, it's not even here. If you say the person violated the safety rule then and put his hand in the revolving machine, right? Well, it's not even in the book, but that's the answer, because the concept is that it's all about the individual, it's all about the managers, right? Anyway, let me go back to the slide I was on. Let me read one or two for you. Right? So we go back to the managers, and I'm reading all, I just reading one or two, right? So senior managers are culture drivers. So this is the first part of it. What could the managers have done differently? So their commitment to health and safety is essential, and you would see that in the case study. You would see what the managers is doing. Is either they were not practicing safety or they were practicing safety. If the organization treats health and safety as a shop floor task, meaning like low, like low priority, then the organization would fail to manage health and safety, which would influence the culture. The health and safety policy, last week chapter, should be endorsed by the senior manager as they engage them. But if the case study said the policy is 10 years old, but then you can say, in my opinion, the senior managers are not committed to safety. There's a negative culture indicator in that they have not signed the policy for the last 10 years. Think you're getting it, folks? You have to understand what you're reading. You're not going to be asked the lines. It's tertiary education after all, right? But you have to understand. You have to pull out what from the case studies tell, and by the way, it's just apparent because the case study will tell you what is what. Let me just read one from here, one from the next one, and I think I'll stop and have us probably try to look at a paper, right? Visible commitment to health and safety motivates employees. Management should practice what they preach. That's not an answer, that's a concept. If you put that for an answer, you get it wrong. When you look at the past paper or the future paper, you'd see the managers were saying PPE must be worn, but then they themselves were not wearing it, right? Managers should praise good performance and be as visible as possible. When they do it, health and safety should be part of the agenda. Managers should use disciplinary measures. Yes, they should. There was a passage, but I don't know if we have looked at it, that said somebody used a fire extinguisher and a supervisor saw them. They used a fire extinguisher to wake up somebody who was sleeping. The supervisor saw that and the supervisor thought it was a joke. They sort of laughed it off. The participa said that. So what's the role of the manager? If they say comment on the role of the manager, you will have to say, well, like the manager wasn't committed to safety because they lacked that ability to discipline the worker who use an extinguisher to wake up a sleeping, co-worker. Right? Let's touch the individual a bit. So the individual would have to be competent. If you look at your book, could you just go back to your book a bit? I'll show you here too, right? If you look at the book. If you go back to your book, right after competence, which is on page 8, I think it is. I don't know if we have the same book, maybe we have a different book. And you'll see where you have this heading on, competent worker. I think I have one of the newer books. I think the pages are a little bit different. Where you have competent worker on, it doesn't matter the pages.
Effective communication.
Yeah, effective communication. What page is that for you? 7. I have it on 8.
Page 8.
3.8.
Are we on the same page? Or we on the
3.8.
same- Okay, it's 3.8. Yeah,
3.2, yeah.
3.2, but the page is page 8. Page 8 of 3. This down here then. This thing down here.
3.2.
Yeah, but the page I'm talking about, that's on the page. You're on page 8,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and it is 3.2, of course, way to the top there. Yeah, anyway. All right, doesn't matter where it is, they have to what page it on. You have to understand the concept, right? So, if you look at this, right, just look at page 8 and page 9 a bit. And what you'll see is that they started to talk about verbal, written, and graphic communication. Now, why would they do that? Because this is not social studies. Why would they talk about verbal, written, and graphic communication? The idea here is that these are the ways to improve the employee. Like if an employee wasn't following procedures, well, you can talk to them verbally. You could give them a written communication, or you can probably show them a video or something. If a worker then wasn't getting the point about wearing PPE or wearing a safety glasses, something simple, right? You could show them a video of something that broke off and stuck into somebody's eye. You see how fast they start wearing safety glasses, right? So when you look at this, right, I wanted to look at your book. What you see there, they went through the advantages and the disadvantages, like the benefits and the limitations, right? But NIBOSH not really asking that. The greater pity, right? The greater, see if you understand, I could write it down. The greater pity is not about the advantages and the disadvantages. It's not about the benefits and the limitations. The greater pity is that these were just seen as ways to improve the worker competence. Because the heading is improving health and safety culture. I want you to forget that. If you're not getting it, I'm going to spell it out for you. They're not going to ask you what are the benefits of written communication. They have not asked so far the benefits of graphic communication. It's not about social studies. It's about telling you. It's about improving culture. Like how they said the managers should take part in inspection. The managers should be visible. Here, what the book is trying to tell you is that if the worker wasn't on par then with the company, there's a way to influence them and get them to be on par, to get them to be on the same level. That is verbal communication, written communication, graphic communication as a way, as a means of improving their competence. Think you get it a bit? So don't be fooled. Don't think you're going to get how it's looking like in the textbook, right? It's not going to come like that. I have a past paper here, but this is really for another class, right? But we could read a little bit and you would see something if you want to read a little bit and see something. So let's just confirm if you're seeing it. This is last month paper, May paper. Let's see if you see now a question there. Are you all seeing a question paper in the back? Are you seeing task 3 right now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay,
Yeah.
watch the question, yeah?
Individual
Same thing I
factors.
tell you, right? Yeah, the same thing I tell you, right? What individual factors of the new factory worker could have contributed to the near miss? What about you? You're part of the culture formula. What about you could have contributed to the accident in this thing here? Now, we're gonna get an answer from. You're gonna start writing about benefits and limitations. No. You're gonna start writing, no, you're not gonna write nothing from the book. You have to understand that individual was all about you. You contributed to the culture. So you go up to the case study and you can see if you could find what the answers were. So you say an individual factor, the new factory worker that could have contributed to the near miss is that the person was a young worker. And then you go and you find out that the person was unskilled or the person was unexperienced. You understand, folks?
Experience.
Yeah, let's you could find one, right? The near miss incident. All right. The machine starts. Immediately, a warning flashes on the information panel, indicating a potential overload. Frustrated, the new factory worker reaches into the vessel. I could get 2 answers right there. I could get 2 answers right there. Listen to the two answers, huh?
When he was frustrated.
Yeah, an individual factor, the new factory worker that could have contributed to the name is that he was under stress. His stress level, I'll put that as an answer. And then I would say, this is in the case study where it was mentioned, the new factory worker was, and I'll put in brackets, I'll put in the inverted commas and in brackets, frustrated, the new factory worker reached into the vessel to remove some of the textile. Another answer, I can say that he was a young worker. Now I'm assuming that he is young because they said new factory worker. So I would say an individual factor that could have contributed to the nearness is that the worker was a young worker or a new worker. This is in the case study where it was mentioned, the new factory worker. So how could you all tell me NIBOSH is hard? It had if you start to study the wrong thing. Right? You start to believe that this is secondary school and you have the right answers from the textbook. The textbook at a tertiary level is meant for you to understand the concept. Right? What you all think? I'd probably have another one there. You know, I could get another one right there, right? Watch it, huh? At the same time, let's see, the new factory worker risk has become entangled in the textile. They cried for help. Okay, so it's kind of too late for them here. Let's see what happened up here before, right? There are 10 rows of textile for the new factory worker to transfer to the dyed area, worried that they would not finish on time. They quickly begin loading the textile into the dyeing vessel. They force the textile from 4 rows into the vessel before they start the machine. So I could talk now, we have to talk about the individual. We cannot talk about the managers here. Folks, you all realize that? If they say what are the individual factors, you cannot say production demand. That is wrong. Production demand is an organizational factor. Write down the formula if you forget it. You have it, I wrote it 2 times. Individual is not the same as the organization. If they ask you what are the individual factors, you have to twist that to be the individual, right? So you can probably say an individual factor of the new factory worker that could have contributed to the nearness is the person lack of experience, or that the person was hurried to get the job done, or in a hurry to get the job done, or the person followed an incorrect procedure in getting the job done, right? Or improper technique in getting the job done. In other words, the blame have to be on the individual, right? Like Shaggy, it wasn't me. In this case, it had to be the individual. It can't be the organization. It had to be the individual. So you have to twist the point. You have to twist it. You have to put the blame on the individual, right? So you can say the person followed an improper technique, and you can say, you can use the line here. This was seen where they force the textile from 4 rows into the vessels, and that's a perfect answer. I'll give you 3 perfect answers here. You know, some of you are still messed up in the week. That's because you're not making notes. And if you're not making notes, find a time and watch over the video. Right? You all have no reason to fail NIBOSH, none, except in yourself. Speaking of individual, everybody here should pass.